Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, DevOps engineer Justin Dennison, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. We are back for yet another week here, and we have the good old crew back together. Don Pizzette above me. Don, how you doing?
I am doing great, pumped up, excited about another episode of Technado.
It's always a good time. It's the best time of the week. It's the only time of the week I put pants on now.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
It is.
I just made that up.
Yeah. And then Daniel's in a different room today. Daniel, how are you doing over there?
I'm styling. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and throw on profile in there.
Are you
with
both?
It. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I'm good with it.
Good to get both done there. And
You know how hard it was not to go, wow!
Blow out the microphone.
Yeah.
and that is the voice of Justin Dennison. Justin, how's it going over there?
It is going fairly well. Got a little bit of a kink in my shoulder, but my fan's running, so hopefully I don't sweat too bad.
We should change the background on that. You're in front of a virtual background, so we should change that every week to fun places.
So we should change it to the background where I'm part of the background also.
I like that one.
Yeah.
It should just be you, like, sniffing your own hair.
It should be the desert.
We should see if we should get the green screen going.
No, because if I stand in it, even though it's virtual, if you put the sun here, I'd still get sunburned.
Yeah, I was watching a movie the other day that it was snowy and I was cold the whole movie going, it's 95 degrees out, but I'm freezing. And we're also joined by Joe Carson today, who is the Chief Security Scientist at Thycotic. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you're joining us all the way from Estonia. That is
That's correct.
far. I don't know if that's not really a question, but yeah, that's beautiful country. I actually spent some time Googling and great Christmas market, it looks like, as well.
It's a great Christmas market, yes. It's an interesting place, a lot of rich cultural history and interesting past.
Very cool. Well, we'll learn more about that, and let's learn kind of how you ended up there and all that good stuff in our first segment, Rapid Fire Questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right, Joe, this is a rapid fire segment. You have 1 minute to 45 seconds. Actually, I should have did the 45 seconds first to answer each question. And if you go over, Peter's going to buzz you. We're going to move on and act like nothing happened. And Peter's going to take our first question.
Let's give an example.
Yep.
And Justin took a long time explaining, so now I got like 20 seconds. I don't know. So let's start first with Thycotic. Can you give us a little bit of background about what the company is and what you guys do?
Absolutely. So Thycotic is a cybersecurity company based in Washington, D.C. in the U.S., and we're a company that focuses around privileged access management. And for most people, that really means about employees who need to access the critical things that they do in their day-to-day job, whether it being applications, their systems, logging into web applications, SaaS-based applications. So it's really about making sure that people who are basically accessing sensitive data to make sure that they have consistent, secure access to the things that allow them to make important decisions for companies. So we help make that possible, and we help make sure that's secure and reduce the likeliness of those being compromised and breached.
So a little birdie told me you're part of the Cyber Rescue Alliance. Interesting name. Can you tell us a little bit about the group and what it does?
Absolutely. One of the things we realized a few years ago was that for a lot of security breaches and incidents that happens in the industry, that it's not just an IT problem, it's not just a security team problem, that they have a lot of interaction between different departments, whether it being the C-level executives, whether it being the PR team, whether it being the legal team, accounting, whether it being even development, communications. So we find that basically from an organization perspective, when an organization does have a security breach, that they need to have expertise from all aspects of their business. So what Cybersecurity Alliance really does is it brings people from different kind of industry backgrounds and helps organizations get a full 360 instant response. So, whether they're having a DDoS attack, whether it's a ransomware attack, they have to make sure that they've got the legal support, they've got the PR support, they've got the industry expertise support, so that they actually provide a more solid response to an incident rather than having to do it kind of in a post-incident scenario. So it really gives them that complete business 360 experience.
Now, the way I heard about Thycotic is that you guys put out a report. It was a CISO research report. And in that report, you mentioned that the role of the CISO has evolved recently. So can you give our listeners a kind of a quick summary of that?
Absolutely. So one of the things, we do numerous different research reports throughout the year. And one that we focus on is the CISO itself, which is basically an evolving role in many organizations where it's really about they've now become the protector of the business and protector of the people. So in the past, the CISO really evolved from basically information security management, really coming from an IT perspective. So it was really about systems and applications and protecting the access, making sure that only the right people get access and no bad actors can gain access. But that role has really evolved into being much more a business focused role and a business risk role, where they are no longer just focusing on technology, but they're also focusing on people and making sure that the people basically can look at it from a business risk perspective. So they're really translating technology and cybersecurity issues into understanding what that means from a business risk side. And this is really kind of evolving that they're becoming much more of a, let's say, a translator from basically business and technology. So making sure the executives and organizations can understand the cybersecurity challenges in a much more understandable and business focus.
Now, Joe, it's my understanding that one of the major areas of focus for Thycotic is privileged access management, as well as like least privilege, those ideas. What are the challenges that you're seeing organizations face in those areas, and how are you helping to address those?
Absolutely. It's a great, one of the things is least privilege and privileged access has been something in the past that's been very difficult. And what Thycotic's really done is we've actually made it easier for more organizations to gain access to it and also adopt it and get value immediately. We've made it possible for organizations to get quick time to deployment. So privileged access and least privilege is really where you're focusing, rather than employees having access to everything, they get access to only the things that enable them to do their job. And it also means they can also access things on demand and apply the right security controls to make it much more secure and protect the businesses from actually cyber attacks. So we really make organizations the ability for smaller, medium, and large organizations to gain access to privileged access management solutions much easier than it has been in the past.
Yeah, they don't give me access to anything here, so we're definitely doing the right thing. So last question, well, we've just got a couple seconds here. I was curious, kind of went down a rabbit hole about Estonia, doing some research ahead of this interview, and found that really cool choral festival and stuff about the language and the Christmas market we mentioned. Living there now, what is the most interesting thing that you learned that you didn't know about before?
Estonia has a very rich past, and it's impressive. I'm learning things every single year. But one of the most interesting facts about Estonia is that in the language, it's one of the most difficult languages in the world. It comes from similar to Finnish and Hungarian, but the language has no future tense. So you can't speak about the future here because it doesn't exist yet. So that's always an interesting thing that for me is always, when you're trying to talk about what you're planning and what you're doing in the future, you have to do it in Estonian in the present tense. So it's an interesting thing. It's one of the few languages. It's also a language that it has no gender as well. So you're either alive as in a person, or you're dead as an object. So it's an interesting language, and definitely one that has caught my attention and interest.
That's really cool. And I want to throw in an unofficial extra question, which is, because we were talking about language, the name of your company, Thycotic, what does that come from?
It comes from a laser tag team from the founder. it's his team name. So that's something that not very many people know. So you're now one of the few to learn that. But yeah, it was originally the laser tag team from the CEO,
Nice.
the founder of the company.
Well, now we know one of the security questions on the bank account.
Yeah.
What's the name of your laser tag team?
That's often one of my questions. What was your favorite laser tag team that you were part of, or your first? So how do you ask a kid in Estonia what they want to be when they grow up? Because they're like, I don't know, that's the future. I don't understand that.
Actually, I don't know. Kids in Estonia are really more about the moment and the time, right? Looking at what they're doing now. So they'll you can still have things that want to be in the future, but you talk about it in the present tense. When the future becomes now or becomes past, then that's what you talk about in that tense. So kids, but in Estonian, kids are right now, it's Jaanipäev, which is one of the biggest public holidays in Estonia. And the kids are often people's country houses, running through fields, climbing trees, and picking things off, the basically apples and plums. So they're really living in the moment rather than really worrying about the future.
Retirement planning there is horrible.
Or 1K.
401k.
Like, you don't know what that is. I need the money
no.
now. They can't either have it now or it's
Exactly.
So
Estonia is all about the present. It's all about what
Exactly.
you're doing now. Don't plan for the future when it happens.
So is that a translation thing, or is that just like
we're shifting the whole focus of the podcast.
I'm trying to. I'm having a real big because I'm trying to think. Like you go to English and you just pull out, right? You have no past tense, right? Just as a corollary. Like I don't know how would I go about. Hey, remember that time?
You remember when I'm dead?
Yeah. So, is it a translation thing, or is that just inherent in the language? Like, does it change based on context?
Yeah, well, they have, first of all, they've got 14 cases in the language, so more than most of us can even get to. I'm actually my learning Estonian is only on the 4th case right now, so I can't ask people to give me things. I can only look at things. So it's inherent in the language. It's a language that there's a funny story in Estonia where the language is invented by two people sitting around a campfire and said, let's come up with the most craziest language in the world that will be very complicated and only a few people will speak.
It's called assembly.
That's Estonian. Machine code, yeah.
Yeah.
It's based on Estonian.
That's it.
All right. Well, now since we have a security expert here, why don't we go ahead and jump to our next segment here and find out who got pwned this week.
Looks like you're about to get pwned.
Fatality.
Yeah!
All right. So our story comes from Bleeping Computer. Twitter discloses billing info leak after data security incident. And it took me a second here because I was like, you have to pay to be on Twitter? But then I remembered, yeah, there's advertising. They're actually making money. So is this something, Don, that was actually hacked? Was this, or they were just letting you know, hey, this info was out there and could have been compromised?
So this is one of those interesting situations where Twitter helps us to kind of remember that a data security incident can mean a number of different things. So as far as they're aware, there is not an outside actor that was able to exploit this and take advantage of it. But for a period of time, there was a flaw in their web code in that if you logged into your business analytics portal and at any point access your payment information, that data was stored in plain text in the browser cache. Now, the browser cache itself isn't like inherently unsecure, but if you used a shared computer, if somebody else came and logged in on your computer, in theory, they could access your browser cache, and then they would now have that information about your Twitter account stored there. So it wasn't properly secured. It wasn't encrypted at rest, or it wasn't set to not cache. Once Twitter was made aware of it, they went and corrected it, and I believe it was as of May 20th was when they actually when they became aware. But then shortly after is when they put the fix in to basically make it where that data just doesn't get cached anymore. So when you view your payment details and stuff, that's loaded in real time and not stored to the cache. So the tricky part here is they do still have to report it. So you could say, oh, this is just a bug. We don't need to tell people about it. But because there's no like logging and tracking and so on what happens with that browser cache, they can't prove that nobody was able to take advantage of this. So they did the responsible disclosure. They told everybody about it. So it's out there, and so now we're aware. So a little bit of a different story this week than a lot of what we've been seeing in the previous months where it's actually malicious attackers going in and getting at something.
Was it out there because it's their choice to be responsible, or is this like a GDPR thing where they pretty much have to tell us or they get in trouble?
You know, there's a kind of a gray line right now that if you don't believe the data got out, even under GDPR, you don't actually have to report that. But then if you're proven wrong later on, you can really get hurt. So you're certainly better off reporting it out. In this case, it depends on who detected it. A lot of times, if a security researcher were to detect the flaw, then the researcher kind of sticks a time frame on it and says, you've got 30 days or 60 days to fix this, maybe 90, before I open up and report this out. But the reports that I read came directly from Twitter, so I don't think there was an external security researcher involved in this one.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that either. It looked like they were doing internal testing and discovered this was could be a problem, so they fixed it. I was thinking about that though, as far as Peter's question about whether or not they need to disclose certain information. I have seen where, like one of the other Technados we were doing, we're talking about the British Airways, that they had the Mage Card attack. not only them, but Newegg got hit with the same kind of attack, and they basically just kind of put a little blurb, said, "Hey, we had this problem and we fixed it," and they sent out a very vague email that they had a problem. And that was them disclosing that there was an issue, and they were compliant. And I bet if you were a Newegg user, you probably didn't realize that that had happened because of that.
Yeah, it's like one news cycle
Yeah.
and it's gone. So, Joe, do you think they handled this the correct way, or would you have liked to see more information from them?
No, I think Twitter is, in regards to responsible disclosure, really went along the right way. These typical things, when organizations go about it incorrectly, you definitely typically get the wrath of the security community, kind of looking into it. But definitely in this particular one, Twitter, it looks to me it has been a regulatory requirement for responsible disclosure that they've actually went and notified correctly, probably from either GDPR, because sometimes you don't know maybe who was its location or geographical location you may have had to disclose, so they decided just to do it across the globe. But Twitter definitely done the right thing. And from the security perspective, they've disclosed enough information that at least you know what to do and how to deal with it.
Joe, let me ask you a quick question. I was listening to a podcast, a different podcast the other day, and it had the CEO from HackerOne, and he was saying, I'm pushing for full disclosure. I want HackerOne to be full disclosure, where anytime we find an incident or a researcher discloses something, that we're just going to lay it bare on the table. And he thinks that other companies should follow suit because it lends to more security in the world, that because we can learn from that. We can see, oh, you had this problem. Here's how we fixed it, and here's how we found it. What's your thoughts on that? What's your take on that?
I think it's really important. One is my kind of experience in doing responsible disclosure is don't make the situation worse than what it is to do no harm, and to make sure that when you're revealing it, you're giving people enough information that they can actually reduce the risk from it. So if a disclosure is going to increase the risk for the customers because the knowledge is out there, that will actually increase the harm from that perspective. So for me, it's all about making sure that if there is knowledge that can actually, configuration hardening, patching that's out there, then it's responsible disclosure is definitely needed. But the important thing is do not make it worse than what it currently is.
One thing this reminded me of was, a lot of us have kind of turned our eyes out to the internet, assuming the attackers are coming from there, right? We're looking for all the routine scanning and penetration, SQL injection, all the various things that are happening from an outside attacker. But in this scenario, it's such a low-tech leak of information. It's just in the browser cache, a shared computer. Maybe you're at a hotel, you use one of those business computers, somebody else logs in, they could potentially access that. This one isn't one that we could detect with network scans, that we wouldn't see the traffic on the network for it. So when companies are trying to set up defense in depth, we focus on these application layer gateways and other things that catch traffic on the network. But here we're back to the local machine. So for you guys over at Thycotic, I know you're working with various companies and helping to make sure they don't get a breach. This isn't really a breach. So do you help with scenarios like this, like better securing endpoints?
From a better security endpoints, what we provide is what we refer to as least privilege. So in this regards is that when people's accessing, it means that basically they wouldn't be able to reuse their credentials to access things that another person was using. So it's really about authentication and authorization. In this particular case, because it's in the browser cache, if other people logged in, for example, the difference is if it was a shared user, then other people would be able to see it. If you're actually logged in as a individual user account, then those would be isolated and separated from other people, so they would not be able to log in and see. So it gets into really the point where if you are using, let's say, public shared machines, you want to be using the browser in potentially incognito mode or private browsing mode, meaning that when you close it down, the cache is removed. So it's important organizations make sure that in those shared scenarios that, once a person logs out, they're not leaving any data behind that could leaving, even those organizations, maybe being a hotel reception area, that they could actually get into a potential data disclosure issue. So it's important that they make sure that they lock down those machines and have it so that the cache is removed when people log out or close the browser.
Yeah, the real mistake here is obviously marketers that are accessing their Twitter ads.
It always comes down to marketing.
I mean, why are you at like the computer lab on campus doing your Twitter ads? Do that at home. Come on. Well, so I went to Thycotic.com the other day, and now I've got Thycotic ads following me everywhere, so I know what you guys are up to. But Joe, why don't you let us know what's coming up for you guys? You mentioned you do some webinars and things like that, and kind of remote speaking things now with everything going on.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we've been doing is we do a lot of industry research and content. So we create a lot of educational information. So we do basically weekly and monthly webinars, which is where you can log in, sit and listen to one of our industry expertise and talk about cybersecurity challenges and solutions. So we provide those on a regular basis. We also do what's called as a live hack series, where it really allows people to join and actually learn about the techniques that hackers use to gain access, so that you can understand. One of my kind of methods is understanding the techniques helps you better understand how to reduce the risks, so you can actually defend better. So we share some of those content, and we also have a number of books. I've just finished this week my 5th book, which is really kind of a series of the Wiley Dummies books that allow to better understand about subjects such as privileged access management or least privileged security, service account, and upcoming ones around cloud security. So these are really kind of educational things that people can download and read, in addition to reports. A few months ago, we also launched our joint kind of podcast as well. So if you're looking to follow information about industry discussions, whether it being on latest reports, educational books in the industry, whether it being, where you're looking to get into cybersecurity, you want some directions for learning. We also have guests on, which are basically sharing their careers in cybersecurity as well. So we have this podcast, which is every 2 weeks, and it's available in Spotify, Apple, and to other sources. You can get it from our website, thycotic.com/podcasts. And it's every 2 weeks we release a new episode. So it's really exciting. We really kind of want to share our industry expertise with everyone out there to make sure that we make the world a safer place online. We make your business safe. We make the families and people who's using the internet, that we just make it a little bit less of a concern for them when it comes to cyber attacks and security.
And remind us the name of the podcast if people are searching for it on Spotify.
Sure. So it's 401 Access Denied.
Makes sense. That's not what you want.
Subscribed.
And
that's not a joke. I actually subscribed to it like right before we started.
Oh, did you?
No, it is a fun. It's a really kind of more kind of sharing kind of past experiences and things that what we're changing in the industry. So how did we get to where we are today? And I think that's really important, is to know the journey and some of those lessons learned, so we don't repeat them in the future.
And you said it's a partnership, though, the podcast?
Correct. It's a partnership between Thycotic and Cybery. Both sponsor the podcast, but we really make it where it's not about products and selling. It's really about sharing knowledge. So Cybery and Thycotic together make the podcast possible.
Very cool. Well, we'll definitely check that out, and maybe Daniel, you'll give us a review next week and let us know what you think.
I'll probably have them all listen to by like the end of the day.
Well, I'm sorry. And for the people watching in Estonia, next week is in the future.
Man, those podcasts are awesome. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's very confusing. I'm going to spend some time looking into that. That's like my whole afternoon shot now, because I'm figuring out how does the future work in Estonia. Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day there to join us and educate us a little bit. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me here. It's great, and enjoy the discussion.
Definitely, and hopefully we can have you back sometime in the future. But for now, stay tuned, everybody. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with more Technado with Don Pizzette right after this.
An IT team that's upskilled and ready for any challenge. How do you get there? Join thousands of other IT leaders and let IT Pro TV be your resource. With more than 4,000 hours of IT training, IT Pro TV gives your team a resource to go to. The most popular vendors: CompTIA, Microsoft, Cisco, Linux, Apple, AWS, and more. The hottest tech, cloud, security, networking, and more. What's next for your organization? Whether it's an implementation, cloud migration, more workstation support, or new technology, you're covered. With IT Pro TV, you can rest easy. Your team will always be ready. It's binge-worthy learning for IT pros. Get a free trial for your team today. Visit www.itpro.tv/business.
Welcome back to Technado with Don Pizzette, and thank you to Joe Carson for joining us there and letting us know all about Thycotic and Estonia. We learned quite a few things, and we're going to spend some time researching those things this afternoon and going down a rabbit hole. But we owe it, we have a responsibility to the community as part of, the podcast community. So we owe it to dispel myths out there and talk about them. And really, it's just an excuse to do our Tinfoil Hat segment again. So let's just jump right into it with Tinfoil Hat Time.
The moon landing was fake. Paul McCartney's been dead since 1966.
Dogs can't see color.
5G causes syphilis.
Do you understand that?
All right, so basically this week is something that I think we've joked about before a lot of times, but here's the article where Bill Gates has actually come out and said it. So this is on usatoday.com, which is, I thought, was just the doormat that you get outside your hotel room. They put a new one every day. But it says, fact check, Bill Gates is not planning to microchip the world through a COVID-19 vaccine, which is what he would say.
That's what I'm saying.
If he was going to do it, but
like he's going to admit to it, right?
Yeah. So what happened basically is he was doing a press conference about something else about the Gates Foundation, and it basically went off the rails where people were like, "Hey, so can you address the microchip thing? Can you address it?" And his comments are basically that it would be funny if it wasn't, scary. But
oddly enough, he was at a Let's Chip the World conference.
Yeah. Yeah, moving everyone to ARM-based chips.
So, conspiracies like this and legends and all that, they always have a grain of truth behind them. And this one supposedly stems from some research that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had sponsored at MIT, where they were researching a way to store a patient's medical records on the patient. And they had developed a dye that could be injected under the skin, and it was invisible. But if you had a particular cell phone app or a special whatever, you could kind of scan that person's arm or the injection point, and you could actually see their inoculation history. Had they gotten their MMR, had they gotten their booster shot, and so on. And they were thinking about like third world countries where paper records aren't really maintained at hospitals. So how do you keep track of whether somebody's been inoculated? So it had a good idea behind it. But that idea of storing information in a person's body, I think, escalated into what we see here, which is they're saying they're going to push a COVID-19 vaccine. Governments are going to require it across the globe. And this is the moment you're going to get that microchip stuck in you. And now Big Brother knows exactly where you are all the time. And sadly, it's somewhat plausible.
Well, and here's what's nuts about this, though. It says a May 20th Yahoo News / YouGov poll found that 44% of Republicans and 19% of Democrats believe Gates is planning to implant microchips in billions of people. Those are ridiculously high numbers.
44% of the people we polled.
Yeah, we stopped after we got those 44.
And we were also at the We Chip people convention.
Must have been, but
Rick,
go ahead.
Can somebody explain to me, like, I don't want a microchip in me, but what do people think the ends of this is?
Well, let me read you a couple of the tweets here.
You have a microchip in your pocket that's tracking you.
That's true. But
it's not in your skin, but it's in your pocket.
Well, it says, Gates wants us microchipped and Fauci wants us to carry vax certificates. That was from someone on Facebook.
Yeah, must be true.
Yeah, and then another Facebook post here said, due to large numbers of people who will refuse the forthcoming COVID-19 vaccine because it will include tracking microchips, the Gates Foundation is now spending billions of dollars to ensure that all medical and dental injections and procedures include the chips, so that the only way they can be avoided would be to refuse all medical and dental treatment. So it's not just, if it doesn't come in the COVID vaccine, it's coming.
This might be the new natural selection, right? Like the people refuse the vaccines and then they die.
Or any and all medical treatment.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the hacker in me says, yeah, man, go ahead and stick that bad boy up underneath that arm skin. I'm good to go. Get my cert now to let me get my knife out. And there goes your little chippy chip. And if I was so inclined, like I didn't want the chip in me and I cared about it.
It needs to be like Total Recall. It needs to be an orb in your nasal cavity that you have to pull out.
Big gun, yeah.
So
awesome.
listen, dental hygienists are really like hardcore about pushing additional services as it stands. But I'm trying to figure out, like, if I'm getting my teeth cleaned if they're like, oh, whoops, I accidentally got you. Oh, you just put the chip in my gums.
You
didn't
did.
You got me. I did not ask for that. I'm not paying for it.
It'll be like Dexter, right? Where they just walk up behind you and right in your neck.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Free microchip with every cleaning.
Yeah. You can buy them for your pets on
So
eBay.
I will say I know some people that are like that were probably part of that survey. Yeah.
The 44%.
He's not naming any names,
man
but his
ain't gonna
initials
track
were,
me.
Yeah, initials were Justin Dennison.
This kind of identity thing pops up every 5 or so years. And I remember back in the 1990s, one of the first movements was coming out where the government was actually talking about doing a chip ID. And in their initial plan, the program had a terrible name. I don't remember what it was. But they wanted to put a chip, and they wanted to put it in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
And
It was called Human Enslavement for
and
Peace.
there's biblical scripture in like the book of Revelation that talks about getting the mark
Taking a
on,
mark,
on the
yeah.
palm of your hand. And so it was like just whoever thought of it had never read the Bible and didn't realize they were going to incense this huge grassroots campaign.
A large swath of like portions of the United States.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went down a really long rabbit hole with this one too yesterday. I was like, well, what's the end goal? So he chipped everybody. He's already a billionaire. What's he looking to get out of this? And basically, Bill Gates is looking to move us to an all cashless society with cryptocurrency, and I guess he would control all the money then, which. I mean, he already does. Like that's what I'm confused about.
Isn't he like the second or third richest person on the planet?
Yeah. And the only reason he isn't the richest is because he's given away like half of it already.
Yeah. Is he, or is this like one of those Hellbop comment things, man? Is it like a detonator chip where he goes, "It's time"?
The Kingsman. It's like Samuel L. Jackson in The Kingsman, where he
We stuck it in our arms. Now it's just a bunch of one-armed society.
If you see Bill Gates with like brand new Nike tennis shoes and icing his genitals, then you know we're in trouble. The spaceship is coming.
Oh man! So real quick, is this the prelude to like idiocracy becoming like actual things?
Oh, we're already
past
there.
that.
Right?
We are already
like,
there.
Like if I go by a peanut field and they're spraying Gatorade all over the peanut field,
They need to move Idiocracy to the documentary section. Like if Blockbuster were still a thing, they'd have to move that too.
Here's scientific research from the early 2000s.
yeah, they're like, but Terry Crews and was it Luke Owens?
I would vote for Terry Crews.
I'd vote for
president, damn
Terry
it.
Crews any day of the week. Any day of the week.
I tell you, hey,
Nacho Supreme.
what is he? He's like in his 50s.
And he's awesome.
Yeah, he's jacked.
He is jacked.
Yeah, he mess you up. He'll also paint you real pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good artist, yeah.
Estonians watch the first 5 minutes of Idiocracy and are like, this movie's about now. No, it's about
They're looking out the curtains. They're like,
it's about the future. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I'm lost.
we jest.
Again, I will understand Estonian
By
tense
God.
by the afternoon.
Yeah.
I promise. All right, our next article in our regular news now.
Now
we
we have
take the
to
tinfoil hats
designate.
off. Yeah, I don't have an intro for just news. Well, I have a
Nope.
big
Nope.
news.
just
You've already
make a
turned
new
my
podcast.
paranoid up to 11.
Let's just make another podcast
Try
called
this.
Tinfoil Hat and
News. It's news.
There we go. It's
It's
official.
dumb.
I'm Tom Brokaw.
Now, the news.
There we go. All right, so from 9to5Mac.com, Apple highlights new developer tools including Xcode 12, ability to challenge App Store review guidelines, and more. I'm excited about the ability to challenge App Store review guidelines because somebody can just go on and say whatever they want, and you really had no recourse before. But Don, there was something else that excited you about this article?
Yeah, because the challenge doesn't really. You can challenge Apple, and it's the same people making the decision a second time, so that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I was wondering. I think it's funny. Challenge. It's in quotes. Like, I don't agree with this. Well, that's tough.
good for you. So what I wanted to touch on here is, we reported last week on how Apple announced that they are going to be switching to their own silicon now, their own ARM-based processors in all Macs over the next 2 years. And I had made the comment that it is a little difficult for applications to get ported over to another infrastructure. Justin, it turned out, had the foresight. He said, I bet they'll update Xcode to take care of that. Justin was absolutely right. They announced Xcode 12, and that it is able to compile what they're calling a universal binary, a bundle that contains both an ARM and an Intel binary inside of it with the click of a button. Like, you don't have to change a single line of code to recompile a Mac OS-based app that's Intel-based over to ARM as long as you're using the Xcode development suite. So they have made it super easy, and that's going to really lower that barrier of entry for ARM-based applications.
And the binaries are only going to be 3 gigabytes in size.
Yeah, which will incentivize you to buy that larger SSD that Apple charges double the retail.
Yeah. You get that 4 terabyte SSD, you better have a checkbook. You better have that Bill Gates money.
But you don't have to buy a cheese grater then as well, because
Double purpose, yeah. That's thinking different.
Yeah,
true. Outside the box, baby.
I will say Xcode is sometimes on my Mac. I'm like, oh, this is nice. And then every once in a while, he just harasses me and goes, you need to install these CLI tools. I'm like, listen, I've installed these CLI tools at least 7 times. And you just keep telling me I need to install them. And then it takes 4 hours to download them.
It's Estonian. It doesn't realize
It goes, no, I meant now, not later. I meant now. So I'm interested to see how like Xcode performs doing these things, because from what I understand, whenever there was that transition from PowerPC to Intel, there was a similar tool set in that version of Xcode where you could like get both binaries from the same code base, but then they got rid of that once they fully transitioned to Intel. I wonder if it's going to be, as well received, but some of their stack has changed since then.
They were motivated back then because they were trying to do an emulation layer, like the original Rosetta and what led to Rhapsody and a few other things, and it didn't perform well. So you could still run those applications on a different architecture, but they just didn't perform at the speed you'd expect. So it was designed as a short-term thing, and I think they killed it off after just 2 years. It was pretty fast. So we'll probably see something like that here, but performance is the other thing I wanted to touch on, because last week I had said that ARM processors do not perform at the same speed as the Intel x86 processors, which is true. But I commented on one way that they could overcome that is with core count. And Apple did not announce how many cores like their new MacBook would have and so on. But there was a really interesting article, which is our next one. Peter, why don't you jump to it?
Sure. This one is from tomshardware.com. Japanese ARM-based supercomputer Fugaku is now world's most powerful, and its first job is to fight the coronavirus. So we've now got the biggest supercomputer, not necessarily biggest, but fastest. It is ARM-based. So how did they manage to do that? I'm guessing it was because of your prediction.
Yeah. So the previous fastest computer was IBM's was it New Horizons, I think is what it was called, and that one was able to operate at just over 200 petaflops, I believe. Actually, hang on, they got another chart.
I think it's 146, isn't it?
Is it 148.6? I guess.
That's a stupid word.
IBM Summit. That's what it was called. IBM Summit, 148.6 petaflops. But the ARM-based Fugaku, or however we say that, is basically 2.8 times faster, able to achieve speeds on average of 415 petaflops, but it even peaked a little bit higher. They're able to do single precision calculations on it at over 1 exaflop, making it one of the first computers to exceed 1 exaflop. So amazing performance. And the way they're doing it is it has over 150,000 CPUs, and each CPU is one of Fujitsu's 48-core A64FX system-on-a-chips, so 48 cores per CPU. Now imagine if you go and buy a MacBook today and you get it with the Intel i7, it's probably got 4 or 6 cores in it, and it may have hyper-threading, so it could show 8 or 12 cores when you actually look at it. Well, if you get a slower ARM processor, but it has 4 times as many cores, 48 cores, that's where you're going to get your performance. A multi-threaded app will scream across that. And things like Spectre and Meltdown won't come into effect because you're not doing hyper-threading. You have actual separate isolated cores, and that's going to be a huge gain on the security front as well. So if that's the way they do it, if you get a 48-core ARM chip in your Mac, I don't think performance is going to be an issue anymore.
I wonder, I was kind of thinking about this because as far as supercomputer, the programming paradigm is a little bit different because my goal is to figure out algorithms or ways to spread out the load as much as possible across things, across as many cores as possible. By the way, if you look at the article that's with this, it's surrounded by road cones, which I thought was funny. But then in consumer level products like Macs and things, a lot of times these applications are still single threaded. Like they've been counting on that this runs at 3 gigahertz and it can boost to 4 gigahertz. I wonder how that's going to change over time if we see Apple move to ARM. Do you think other PC manufacturers are going to start moving to ARM and we'll just see hey, we need to learn how to do multi-threading and concurrency appropriately.
I think it'll be a cultural change. I think people will have to say, look, originally I planned on delivering my load to just one place. Now I need to learn to spread my load across more than one. I was able to deliver the line with a straight face.
You were. You got me. Peter, real
How many
quick.
petaflops is your load, Don?
I was going to ask Peter. So you said it was a dumb term.
Yeah.
Do you know what flop is?
No.
Floating point operations per second. Yeah. So it's about doing math, Peter.
Well,
and I know how you look.
I don't know why you had to make it dirty. We were talking math over here.
Yeah.
So, is this like a big black eye to Intel? Because it says in the story, Intel not long ago claimed that their Aurora computer would be the first supercomputer to break the exaflop barrier, and now they're beaten by an ARM chip. So, I mean, it's not a good look for them.
There's actually been a couple of things. We don't have the article here. There's a former Intel engineer who's out there saying that the Skylake processors that they're making right now, that was really the nail in the coffin that made Apple want to switch. That when Intel develops a new processor, they have to do all sorts of bug testing and so on. And apparently Apple found tons and tons of bugs, and they were reporting all them back to Intel, and it got to the point where Apple was reporting almost as many bugs as Intel themselves was on their internal testing. Wow. And so apparently they're having some quality issues, and they are having a harder time creating newer, faster processors. So it's not looking great for Intel right now, but they've been dominating the market for a long time. I wouldn't be surprised to see them come out with some new infrastructure, new architecture next year, and just kind of keep progressing. So we'll have to see. That'll be a longer game to see where that's going to end.
Well, it was interesting. I remember last week when we were talking about the move, in the article, I think it said that Apple made up like 5 to 7% of Intel's business. So, as we see that change, where are they going to make that up, and, are they going to be able to? And are other people going to jump ship and move to these ARM-based chips as well? So,
hey Don, speaking of which, does ARM provide because those Skylake processors, those were 7-nanometer dies? Was it 7-nanometer architecture?
I think they were 7 or 14.
But then the ARM one that Apple says, didn't they say they were going to 5-nanometer?
That I do not know. It'd be impressive if they did. The smaller the die, the more power efficient they are, and they're all about getting that battery life. And if you're going to 48 cores, that's one thing that I didn't mention in the other article is that this Fugaku supercomputer, it was 2.8 times faster than the IBM Summit, but it also consumed 2.8 times more power. So it really wasn't any more power efficient than the IBM solution. It just was more powerful. So that's not what Apple wants. Apple wants something to be more power efficient. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right. So before we move to the next article, does anybody...
Skylake was 14 nanometer.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Sorry.
Does anyone else have any predictions for what will be in the news next week, now that both Don and Justin predicted something last week that we're talking about now this week?
I thought we were just talking about right now.
The Estonia will launch
There's
a
no
new future tense.
Yeah.
That Estonia will
The
boycott
future is
Technado.
now, right? Yeah. That's the Estonian slogan.
Should we make up more thing? I think that 5G towers will shoot hypodermic needles full of tracking chips.
We didn't even think of that. They've got dispensers all over.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's like a weird Godzilla monster that huddles down and then it shoots tracking chips all over. Yeah.
All right.
But it's a
Crawls out
5G
of the
tower.
ocean.
I'm like, just stay right there. I got good reception. Oh, it got me in the neck.
I will keep refreshing Engadget till I see the article about that. I'm sure it's coming out.
I'm like, there's a weird kaiju full of hypodermic needles full of RFID chips.
Nice.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Our next article here is from ArsTechnica.com. Microsoft is adding Linux, Android, and firmware protections to Windows. Unfortunately, all 3 editions are currently available only to big organizations. Do we need to be in the, what was it, the Ring?
No, and it's not entirely true either. You don't have to be a giant organization to take advantage of this, but you do have to pay. So what this is, they're extending out the Microsoft 365 Advanced Threat Protection, ATP. So if you are a Microsoft 365 customer, in other words, if you're using Office 365, then you can take advantage of this. There are a couple of requirements. Your computers do need to be Active Directory joined, and not just to any Active Directory. It needs to be the Azure Active Directory. And if that's the case, you can leverage Windows Defender. So Microsoft has basically pushed out Windows Defender for Linux, so you can get basic virus protection. And then they've introduced a few extra things to go on top of that. But just being able to support Linux and Android, these are things that Microsoft wouldn't have done in the past. So we're now seeing that expand out. And today, it's not that big of a deal. But as this continues to evolve over the next couple of years, I think what we're going to see is that Windows Defender is going to basically make it where if you're a Microsoft shop, that you don't really need to leverage third-party endpoint protection anymore if you have it all right here. There are still a lot of things that they don't do. They don't give you a great way to manage Linux drive encryption, for example. So that's an important thing that we do have in Android, we do have in Windows, but we don't have in Linux. So we'll see a little bit more. But a neat feature they added is firmware protection. That the ATP product will actually scan your UEFI partitions and look to see if there's any payload being stored in there, because what happens there is if malware can get into your UEFI partition, it can actually change your firmware, and it can then persist even if you format the computer and reinstall the operating systems. That's a really dangerous modality for an attack, and so they're working to protect that.
You kind of said it all.
Yeah, you got it, Don. Man, could have said it better, but said it.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I'd ask a follow-up question if I understood that.
So I actually do have a question for Daniel, because we talk about these UEFI attacks.
Yeah.
I've never actually seen one. I've read about them. I've read proof of concepts. Are these in the wild?
I'm sure they are. I've never seen one. I don't really.
It's like the boogeyman.
Yeah, I'm more focused on web application security than I am UEFI attacks, and I would assume that we'd be seeing them like left and right if it was a real issue. So
this is one of those things I struggle with UEFI when I'm trying to dual boot Linux, much less try to build an attack around it. I'm like, hold on, do I turn it on or turn it off? Is it kind of on? Crap.
Is it kind of on?
Yeah.
It's quantum computing, right? It's not on, it's not off, it's kind of on.
It's there. Kind of pregnant.
But real quick, do you think this leads into, speaking of predictions, the coming of Microsoft Linux?
I believe so. It's bound to happen, right?
So WSL2, we've talked about numerous times. The 2004 update, not the year 2004, but 2004, April 2020 update just came out mainstream. So everybody should be receiving that. Even my computer at home that was held up because of some hardware thing, I picked up the update just yesterday. And WSL2 does have the Microsoft managed Linux kernel, but it's still Canonical that's creating that main image that's being used there. So it's not fully Microsoft Linux yet, but we are getting really close. I feel like it's any day now that we're going to have that official Microsoft build.
So if we keep seeing, so you said Canonical, that's multiple times like Canonical and Microsoft are kind of intertwined. Is it a possibility that Microsoft will acquire Canonical?
I was kind of surprised that Microsoft didn't try to acquire Red Hat. But that might be because they've already been working so close with Canonical. And hey, it would be a good fit if Microsoft acquired them. Like, Canonical is a good company. They make a stable product. But as far as enterprise sales, because they give away their OS the way that they do, they don't have that revenue stream like Red Hat does, where you actually have to pay to use the OS regardless of whether you use the support. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a play there. And it would make a lot of sense on a number of different levels.
You will have to pay if Microsoft buys them.
Yeah, get that money.
Maybe. I mean, if they tie it into Azure, they know they're going to get their money on the infrastructure side. So maybe if they go the route of like Amazon doesn't give you Amazon Linux to install locally. I guess you sort of can, but they don't really support that. They know that if you use Amazon Linux, you're going to run it in AWS and they're going to make that money there. So Microsoft could go that route.
All right, another prediction. We'll keep an eye on it. Our next article is over at theregister.com. Feds cuff Detroit man for allegedly hacking University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Data pilfered from PeopleSoft HR database sold to tax fraudsters, it is claimed. So we're saying that, first of all, cuff is a stupid word, so he was arrested. It's cuffing season.
Actually, they just cuffed him and left him.
Yeah, he's still there.
Man chained to radiator in the basement of
They're
University
like,
of
don't
Pittsburgh.
you do it again. I can't leave.
So we're basically saying this guy went in and stole the database from their HR records and just sold it off?
So apparently he broke into it in a way that he had access to run queries and so on and be able to pull data out of it. But what I found was really interesting, because I've wondered this before, like, how do you benefit from this? So that hacker breaks into this database. How does he benefit? And this is one of the first articles I've seen that actually kind of went into how he monetized it. And it doesn't make any damn sense to me. And so maybe you guys can help me, because it says in here, let me find it, where basically what he did is he stole the social security number and other information for all of these employees, 65,000 employees from the medical center's PeopleSoft system. And then he turned around and sold that on the dark web to fraudsters. And so the fraudsters, would have bought that off of some kind of auction. And they don't say how much he got from that. So it could have been $1,000, could have been $20,000. We don't know what he actually got for it. But then the fraudsters took that and they filed fraudulent tax returns with the IRS for those employees. And they managed to get about $1.7 million in tax refunds. But then here's where it gets really weird, is they say they asked that their refunds be issued onto Amazon gift cards.
What?
Can you do that? The IRS?
That doesn't make sense.
You can do that if you use, I don't know about Amazon gift cards, but you can get gift cards through, depending on who you use as your tax preparation. Right, you can get those prepaid gift cards.
You went to like H&R Block or something, you get it on a Visa gift card.
Now, you have to sacrifice a percentage up front
to get it now versus...
Well, that must be true then, because it says, and let me just read specifically so we make sure I'm not screwing this up. It says, these dark web customers asked that their refunds be issued onto Amazon gift cards, which were then used to purchase goods on the e-commerce site. And then it goes on to say that they purchased almost $886,000 worth of merchandise, which is like half of the amount of money that they got from the IRS.
Do you think they sold the gift cards, though?
Maybe, or if they used H&R Block, then maybe that was their cut, for getting the advance.
I forget what their cut is. It's fairly sizable.
Yeah.
I don't know
so
if it's half.
It's like 10%.
But you know what? It makes sense if you're going to file a fraudulent tax return. You don't want to wait to see them review it to give you your tax return. I want that money now, because I could care less if it's flagged as fraudulent or not. Because I know an individual that this happened to, and the IRS calls them periodically and is like, "Hey, you still owe us taxes." They're like, "No, I do not."
Yeah,
someone filed taxes on my behalf.
Well, this one gets more complex, because then once they bought the merchandise, they then used another organization to ship it in Miami to reship it down to Venezuela, where so they bought iPhones and other electronics, and they got it shipped down to Venezuela, where they then sold it in various online marketplaces down in South America. And so then that's when they got the actual money to use. So while it started out as $1.7 million that they stole from the IRS, by the time this is all said and done, they probably just ended up with a few $100,000.
It's a lot of steps.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of steps. This seems way too complex to make it worthwhile.
All right, I've got my prediction for next year. For I guess it would be next year. So I think that TurboTax will start offering to give you your refund in Bitcoin, because the real winner here is H&R Block or whoever did these taxes, because they got their cut and they just they're not in trouble, but they should be.
Well, if they didn't do their due diligence,
if they didn't research and see who these people actually were. Justin's pondering something very hard.
So this is the second time where I understand the process of laundering money, but this seems a little beyond scope for a basic laundering scheme.
Yeah, I've seen Ozark.
If I'm going to be a criminal, this is way too many steps. I'm going to simplify it, right? To buy crack rock, sell crack rock, right? That's easy. 2 steps.
For Amazon gift cards, right?
Yeah.
Or cash.
Cash.
Maybe you have one more step in there where you have a car wash, right? Or a laundromat, or some cash.
Nail salon.
Nail salon. Taxi service.
I think Wu-Tang said it best, with cash rules everything around me. Now,
diversify your funds.
That's right. Now, focusing on the hacker in this case, that's kind of an interesting story too, because it looks like he managed somehow, and they haven't said how he actually got access to that PeopleSoft database. So maybe he phished somebody or got some credentials. But once he was in, he then had to learn how to use PeopleSoft. And so when they examined his computer, he did over 1,000 Google searches, including the word PeopleSoft, to be able to learn how to find vulnerabilities in it, to interact with it, and use it to be able to gather data. He then put that data in his Google Drive, which they were able to find in 2 two folders, one labeled PeopleSoft Permissions and another labeled Super User. And in there, he was storing all his information. He did use Tor to be able to try and anonymize himself, yet they were still able to find him. They haven't disclosed exactly how they did that as well, but we know Tor is not a perfect solution.
Well, this makes me think back to our interview with Least Privilege, that you could have people watching, seeing this story now and going, oh, I work at such and such place where I'm paid, pennies, and we've got a database of 100,000 people in PeopleSoft. Why don't I just download it and sell it? So, something like that where you only need access to the things you need access to would be very important.
Real quick, if you're working at a place and have access to PeopleSoft and you're getting paid pennies, do you have the technical savvy necessary not to go to prison?
Yeah, the technical savvy to Google 1,000 times to find out.
I just scrolled down the page and saw his picture there. I was wondering what happened to George the Animal Steel, but now we know.
So, that picture's a little misleading. That's a different incident. That guy got 20 months behind bars for stealing $30,000 worth of crypto cash. So it was another one. He was actually an IT support worker, so they know how he got in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't look happy in that picture.
No, he does not.
I mean, it's a mugshot.
Yes.
Yeah, who's happy in a mugshot?
He actually looks contemptible, like, can you just take the picture already?
Well, do you remember the website Smoking Gun?
Oh, yeah.
They used to, every now and then, they would post the happy mug shots, and it'd be a list of like 20 people that are all smiling or posing,
All the celebrity mug shots are happy.
Yeah.
I'm guessing those are the ones who know they're going to get off. Like, they know they didn't do it.
Or when you get to turn yourself in, as opposed to the guy that's got like a black eye or something.
Or they're high on bath salts.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about
They're
that.
looking at the guy taking the picture going, he looks delicious.
Yeah, man.
He looks like a turkey leg smoked to
That face looks just tasty.
Man.
All right. Hey, it's July now, and that is our CompTIA month here at IT Pro TV. And Justin's got something coming up later in the month on Friday, July 31st. He's going to be hosting Spin It to Win It. It's kind of like that Pat Sajak show, but with more lose-a-turns apparently on the board.
We should just call it Lose a Turn.
Yeah, Lose a Turn with Justin Dennison.
It's called Circle of You Lose.
Circle of Death.
Fun fact, the other show was originally hosted by Chuck Woolery.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Was Vanna involved at that point?
No, she was not.
Did Chuck have to go over and turn the...
No, there was also a turner.
somebody,
but,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like all touchscreens. It's like... Robots could do your
Does
job.
she really need to touch it?
Robots don't look as good in their 60s as Vanna does.
Yeah.
Or do they?
Maybe.
They could. I mean,
This robot looks like the day I made it.
All clunky and full of servos, just clickety-clacking about.
Turn wheel.
I'm like, you are gorgeous.
Oh, man. Give Daddy a kiss. Ow, you hurt me.
Ooh, you got exposed wire. I think you got a short somewhere.
I felt the electricity, though.
Yeah, I love you.
If you head over to go.itpro.tv/spin-it, then you will find out all the information about that. But basically, it's just Friday, July 31st, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. All you have to do is have a free IT Pro TV membership, and you can watch that in the on-air page there. So make sure you sign up for that account ahead of time. And while you're looking at stuff here, we've got the next webinar coming up on Thursday, July 9th. That's next week. The Stack 'em Up, Build Your Career with CompTIA Certs, how to stack CompTIA certifications for your career path. Thursday, July 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. More information about that is at itpro.tv/webinars, and then we'll be talking soon about Daniel's one about securing your future with CompTIA certs related to security coming up after that one. But all that great webinar stuff, itpro.tv/webinars is where you can see that. And finally, while you're on that internet, head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. There you can sign up for your personal account and start your free trial. You can get 30% off the lifetime of your subscription, get access to great things like those webinars and the Spin It game as well. But you can also request a team trial for your team and demo, and check out the Pro Portal and all the cool stuff involved with that. That's all at go.itpro.tv/Technado. All right, so we've got our predictions down, and we've written them all down.
I haven't written anything down.
Yeah, well, it's recorded.
I have to go buy some nice new Nikes.
Sorry, I was thinking of the Spin It slug that you just said, and I looked over. And did you read the last article we had, the slug? said, "Feds arrest Detroit man believed." And that's all.
Yeah,
there.
That's the URL.
Yeah.
Feds _arrest _Detroit man believed. Yeah, that
can't be right.
That's an SEO.
Believed to be the Antichrist?
They must have updated the headline because now it says like allegedly hacking universities, so probably believed to have, or something.
Yeah, no, that's
appropriate slugs.
Maybe he just believes.
He believed.
But wouldn't you want all the words in that anyway for SEO purposes?
Nobody knows how SEO works.
That's true.
It's like voodoo.
He just told the judge, he said, "Listen, judge, you're going to try to push your beliefs on me. I believed that stealing from PeopleSoft was fine.
It's my religion.
And you can't push your truth. Ain't my truth."
Alternative facts.
That's how it works.
Well,
I feel that I'm in the right.
Yeah, if you want to reach out on Twitter to ITProTV and if you're from Estonia and you're mad about all the stuff Justin said, you can put that there. And other nice comments you can put to us there as well.
What the hell are you talking about? Yeah. I didn't say anything derogatory toward the Estonian people. They're a lovely group.
Oh, you say that now.
And there's Estonian pitchforks and torches outside of your...
Wait a minute, am I Frankenstein's monster now?
Coming for you. It's going to take him a
while. That's little click-clack in the back. He's a clickety-clack. He loves me. I built him.
Oh, your robot's going to
the robot turn.
The robot's
I'm glad Daniel's following along. And Don's looking at me like, "What are you talking about?"
All right,
your robot.
Was it Old Glory Insurance? Yeah, Old Glory should take care of that.
We've lost Justin.
We have. Can we mute this mic? Can we just mute that? All right, thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you next week right here on Technado with Don Pizette.